Welcome to AZ Central's election show, where we bring you inside the newsroom to take a deeper look into issues affecting Arizona's elections. In this episode, we'll examine how the state's economy could affect voter attitudes as they cast their ballots. First, we'll get you up to speed on the state of the economy, jobs, and the state of last year's federal tax cut legislation. Our economy reporter will then give his on-the-ground assessments, and then our political team will talk about how these pocketbook issues could affect the outcomes.
In the second quarter of this year, the United States economy grew at the amazing rate of 4.1%.
The economy is humming along, and that's typically a good sign for the party in power, but this is no typical time.
We just talked about this booming economy, something the president and his party should be able to sell to the American people. But then you have first, the traditional midterm dynamics. The president's party almost always loses in the first midterm. And dynamic number two, in much of the country, including the places where you have those toss-up races, where you have those soft Republican seats, the president's toxic. The national unemployment rate, which has been declining since 2010, fell to 3.9% in July, according to the latest job numbers. And Arizona's economy is also doing well. The unemployment rate in the state has dropped 6 percentage points since 2010, though it remains higher than the nation as a whole. Arizona has seen above average wage growth, in part because of its higher minimum wage. While the international trade war sparked by tariffs could create new worries, for now at least, the U.S. economy is relatively stable. But President Donald Trump adds volatility to the mix. And although he remains widely popular with Republicans, he's deeply unpopular with Democrats and independents. Republicans everywhere are touting the economy and the corporate tax cuts that went into effect months ago. But those corporate tax cuts have turned out to be, well, not that popular. The public seems more focused on other issues, such as healthcare and immigration. So when voters submit their ballots in November, the question is, will they be voting with their pocketbooks or something else?
And the reality is that the economy is on a very strong trajectory. We just have to recognize that there are risks looming. We're looking in the rearview mirror now, and what we really need to be doing is looking forward.
Hi, I'm Richard Gaggle, reporter here at the Arizona Republic and AZ Central in the newsroom with Russ Wiles, the economic guru, columnist, business reporter.
More or less. Yeah.
Talking about how the shape of the Arizona economy, the health of the Arizona economy, might affect voters. What is the status of the Arizona economy as we sit here?
Well, Arizona, following the nation as a whole, is doing very well right now. I mean, the U.S. just last week got its best economic report card in 4 years. 4.1% GDP growth. We've been in that 2.5% range growth for a long time, and this looks like it's going to give a second wind to the economic expansion that already has been going on for 9 years. Now, Arizona hasn't been doing quite as well. We've been lagging a little bit, but we're doing okay. We're doing okay, particularly the Phoenix metro area. And
is there a chance, I mean, obviously this would continue through the fall up until Election Day, right? This trend? Or
possibly.
Are there warning signs on the horizon?
The U.S. economy is like an aircraft carrier. Once it's in motion, it tends to stay in that direction. A lot could happen, obviously, but it's certainly, it bodes well for incumbents and the White House. There will be other issues, of course, for the election, but it bodes well.
Forgive the simplistic question, but voters are happier when the economy is doing better, correct?
Generally speaking, and consumer confidence is up right now. People feeling better about their finances, their 401ks, home values, jobs are plentiful, relatively plentiful. So these are good factors.
Were the tax cuts passed by the Trump administration part of this?
I think they clearly were. I mean, regardless of where you stand on the political divide, I think that the tax cuts gave a boost to the economy. That said, the economy was expanding before that. We were 7 years into an expansion before Trump came to power, but I do think you could probably give him some credit for a little second wind there.
Are there dings, especially in Arizona, where you could say, yes, the economy is doing well, but if I'm running against the incumbents, here's some weak spots that I want to exploit?
Speaking broadly, I think Arizona is kind of an example of a have-not state in the sense that a lot of the growth is concentrated in Metro Phoenix and particularly in Phoenix, Chandler, Tempe, Scottsdale. The rural areas, Tucson, aren't doing nearly as well. Tucson, in fact, still has not recovered all the jobs it lost during the recession. They're close. Phoenix has, passed that a couple years ago. The U.S. economy has gained 1.5 times what they lost in the recession. So
right.
Tucson's an example of part of the state that's lagging.
Right. I think you had a story that said it was the lost decade. We'll see how this plays out through the election season. Thanks for joining us.
Well, as we've heard from Russ, people are feeling more optimistic about the economy, jobs, their bank accounts. Can you give us a sense of how, particularly Governor Doug Ducey, is positioning himself on this issue, which clearly appeals to a lot of people?
Right. He's definitely touting the jobs that have been created under him. These are some of the materials he brought to the endorsement meeting with our editorial board, or interview, I should say. 160,000 jobs created in the private sector, 150,000 more on the way. He's sort of citing some big names that have come here or expanded, basically just painting himself, as he always has, pro-business, savvy businessman. The economy is going to continue to do well under him.
And of course, as the savvy businessman, if Governor Ducey were here, he'd remind us all that the government does not create jobs, but the governor does create the environment for jobs. And he does tout these businesses moving in. Many of them, he says, are escaping California and the tight regulations there. There was a news conference he held with a tech company that had moved a portion of its operations here in Phoenix, and I asked the CEO sort of what I thought was the softball question: compare the two business climates, California and Arizona, and the CEO said, California is a great place to do business. I was like, okay, no, that's not the memo you're supposed to be getting there. But he is touting his, and that's behind his thing of security. We're going to secure the economy, secure the jobs, and the Republican Governors Association is putting out a message that say if David Garcia is the nominee, he's going to put all this at risk by putting us down a reckless path.
On the federal level, give us a sense of how the congressional candidates and the senatorial candidates are positioning themselves on this issue.
The economy is something that Republicans want to talk about. They like that conversation. They feel that that's favorable ground for them. There's been a recent effort toward talking up the tax cuts again, trying to say how much they are starting to see in terms of tangible results. Democrats aren't really disputing that, and I think that they're happy to have the conversation hover over other matters, whether it's the Mueller probe or immigration and things like that activate their bases. It's not clear to me that this is something that voters are really kind of, hooking on to the whole question of, well, how's the economy? That is frustrating for Republicans who are trying to get that message out and want that to be the issue.
There are areas, though, in the state outside of Maricopa that might not feel so optimistic.
Right, absolutely. So there continues to be a huge divide in prosperity and economic well-being from Maricopa County, even down in Pima County, larger Tucson metro area, and rural parts of the state. You can look at some federal data that shows sort of how each county is recovering in Arizona from the recession, and some have not, essentially. So you've seen in recent reports and studies that have come out, we're still among the worst for our overall poverty rate. I believe that's close to 18%, also among the worst for our child poverty rate, I should say, 1 in 4. So
pretty big numbers, and we'll see how they play out in the election. Thanks for joining us.